Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest Times Techies webinar. Today, we have with us two top contributors to the code hosting platform GitHub, who will help us understand how to become a top open source developer like them. GitHub lets developers work with each other on projects from anywhere in the world, and it's been a big boon to the open source movement. We have with us today Nabarun, Kubernetes steering committee and senior engineer at VMware. We also have Divya and Mohan, who is a Kubernetes docs maintainer and a CNCF ambassador and a senior tech evangelist at SUSE, SUSE. That's a lot of titles, Divya. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Akhil. Thank you for that warm welcome and for that great introduction.
Okay, maybe we can just open it up to both of you. So, how did both of you get into writing code on GitHub and getting into the open source movement? Maybe we can start from there. Divya, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I will keep it as brief as possible because, to be honest, if I go the long road, this could be a one-day podcast. So I essentially was not a developer. Self-taught developer after getting into open source is like my claim to any sort of programming proficiency. I started using GitHub in my day job when I was with HSBC, and I also had Kubernetes on the sidelines, and that was something we onboarded as part of the support that we offer to our IT streams. So how I got started was I got interested in Kubernetes, and I was like, hey, the source code for this is open. Maybe if I actually get involved in the community and learn a little more, I too can figure out why certain features become a part of the release and certain features don't make it to a part of the release, and what is the whole process. Like, that was what interested me. And to understand that code, you need to be able to know some bit of programming and development, right? So that's how I got started. And the fact that code was available on GitHub and was open, and it's still open, by the way. It's open to anyone for consuming. You That's what got me interested in the whole movement in the very first place. Nabrun, what about you?
So GitHub has been a very important part of my journey since I would say my first year of undergraduate, when I created a GitHub account. And one of the highlights that GitHub helps with students is they have a GitHub student program where you get certain privileges and benefits, which usually are paid for non-students. So that helped me get a lot of traction. Let's say, for example, you get, if you want to build an app, you need to add payments to it. GitHub used to give some Stripe credits that you can use instead of paying out of your own pocket. If you enroll for the GitHub student program, you can essentially could have gotten API keys to payment providers. You can create your own website for a year for free. You can host it on GitHub. So that's how I got started into GitHub. Kubernetes has happened like a lot later compared to when I started using GitHub. GitHub probably I'm using for the last 9 years, with my first Kubernetes contribution being only like 4 years back, I think 2019. Kubernetes was also something that I did not do as my day job before. I used to work on Python data infrastructures back then in 2019, and eventually like got into Kubernetes to orchestrate applications, and that's how I got more involved with the Kubernetes project, and then eventually like contributed in several areas and got to where I
am. Could you touch a little bit more on how before Kubernetes, what did you start with? What did you start with at GitHub in your contributions?
Yes. So Kubernetes is, I think, one of the largest projects that hosted on GitHub. And I think personally, everyone who wants to contribute to Kubernetes needs to be on GitHub because our source control is GitHub. So that's how Kubernetes and GitHub are essentially tied together to each other.
Oh, okay. And before Kubernetes, what did you contribute towards?
I think when I was in my undergrads, I used to just write some toy apps,
Mm,
website, infrastructure things. I am also not a software engineer by education. It is just by mere interest that I'm into software engineering.
mm, mm.
Um, and then after I graduated from college, my first company, we used to host our code on GitHub.
Okay, so what did you do in your undergraduate?
I studied something called metallurgical and materials engineering.
Okay,
So that's
and
quite
so
a different.
and so in your spare time, you used to contribute to write open source code for GitHub.
Yes, I used to write open source stuff on GitHub.
Did a lot of your classmates do that?
Yes, since the student pack gave everyone a lot of bells and whistles that they can use. And most importantly, some people are also shy publishing their code as an open source project early on. So the student pack essentially gave them closed source, like closed repositories, like private repositories you could use using the student pack. So that also helped a lot of people to gain confidence first when writing code, deploying it, and then open it up for people.
No, that's interesting that there are perks for students.
Yeah.
Divya, you want to jump in? What was it like when you started? What was the process like? Was it confusing,
Oh, yeah.
intimidating?
Very confusing, very intimidating because everyone seemed to know it and I didn't. Also, like I said, and like Nabarun, I didn't come from a computer engineering, software engineering background. I came from an electronics engineering background. Um, got into IT because let's be honest here, I got placement in an IT firm, and then I got interested in what I was actually doing, and I ended up like actually liking what I do, which was system administration at that point in time. So I used to not only work with, uh, the middleware side of things, and, actual systems, operating systems, and, the kernel and stuff like that. But I also had this thing wherein, I would try. Like scripts were already written. Like I used to work with a big MNC at both my previous jobs. So I used to work with big MNCs. So there were scripts, and I never used to understand what you know how
Oh,
it was
what is a
exactly
script?
automated. Yeah,
What's
yeah.
for our audience? What is a script?
So
And for me,
yeah, so essentially it's just a bit of code. if I can
okay.
if I can if I can say it in the simplest of terms, it's a bit of code doing a particular task that you wanted to do.
Uh,
uh so
uh,
so I essentially started digging into scripts, learning how to write bash and Python scripts by myself. I didn't end up writing world changing stuff, let me tell you that,
uh,
but I did help save a lot of money for my previous organizations with the automation that I did. So maybe changed a little part of the world. And then I realized that, you use source control, like development folks in my organization use source control, and version control stuff like GitHub, which is when I got interested in, like actually storing scripts and updating them. Before that, I used to just like, I know it sounds bad right now, but I used to just store like version copies on Bastion hosts or local copies in my machine. I never used to work with GitHub before I
uh,
actually discovered GitHub was a thing.
uh,
And and then I think I started learning GitHub, and it was very confusing because I didn't understand, and I still don't think I understand the entire Git branching strategies or whatever else. Like I don't think it's possible to absorb all of that knowledge. But when I started out, all of that seemed intimidating. And the very first, I think, time I actually did a Git rebase, I unsuccessfully did a Git rebase, which is like a very basic thing to do. I
uh.
cried tears of joy because I was struggling with it for like, I don't know, 5 days.
What is that? What is a kit rebase?
So essentially, I think to to explain it in the simplest of terms, if you're in a team and you're working together, right, on the same thing, I'm not even going to take code. If you're working on the same thing, there and you're using Google Doc, you can
Mm.
overwrite each other's changes, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So what if you want to go back when it comes to code? Like, what if you want to not
Mhm.
have that previous thing, or what if you
Right. Right.
want, and suppose if you want the previous person's code taken out, or if you don't want that person's code taken out, you want all of that code essentially visible as the chunk that is there, like your final document. That is what your doc does for you, is
Mm.
whatever amendments are done, it presents the final doc. But what
Right.
if you want
Right.
to cherry pick out of that?
Mm.
So rebase allows you to do that. I know it's not like the perfect definition, so Nabarun,
Mm.
if you want to jump in and say something about it, you can let me know. But it's essentially that it allows you to pick out and
Okay,
pick
I
and
understand.
throw stuff whatever you don't want out of
Mm.
the changes that have been made. So
Okay.
when
Okay.
I did that, I cried tears of joy because I did not know how to do that for the longest time. And I think the first time I did that was when Nabrun was the no. Nabrun was one of the lead shadows. He was going to lead the release team for Kubernetes, and I was one of the comms shadows. And
Mm.
I was like, I had to do that, and I was like, oh my goodness, I managed to do one rebase successfully. I was
Mm.
really happy. And after that, several mishaps have happened, but I'm glad to say I've gotten better.
Uh-huh.
But still not the best at it. So yeah,
Uh,
it's
you
always a learning
mentioned
journey.
you mentioned that it helps you become more structured by, like, you used to save what version codes on your laptop,
Yeah,
and this makes you more organized, GitHub.
yeah, it does. And it's honestly uh like, I think it's one of those things that I didn't know of personally.
Mm.
I knew that it existed, but I didn't
Mm.
really know what it was, because it was not something that I had to deal with in my career. So,
Right.
like for 6 7 years, I didn't have to look at it. I did not. I
Uh-huh.
knew of its existence. I knew that it
Mhm.
existed somewhere, but I didn't have
Mhm.
to look at it. And when I first saw it, I was like, "Wow, this is intimidating." I don't even. I was like, "What is Markdown? And what is HTML? What is CSS? And all of these new things." Like, I know all of these things have floated around me in the ecosystem, but when I first encountered all of this, everything just like hit me like one wave. So it was intimidating, very, very intimidating at first, because I was not from this side of things at all.
And how did you deal with that? Did it get easier over time?
Um, Intimidation, like you get intimidated by different things. That is all.
Mhm.
Like the intimidation never goes away. It's like it's like levels of difficulty in a video game, right? Like you cross one level, you get another level of difficulty in the video
Right,
game.
right, right. Uh-huh.
So this is like that. So I used to get intimidated by that stuff before. Now I have new stuff to be intimidated by in my career and in open source. So that never ends, like
Uh,
according to me. And
uh,
what really helped was having a lot of folks. Like I remember when I first started out, a lot of people like Nabrun was one of them, Nikita, then Dims, and a lot of other people were very kind enough to hold my hand and tell me that this is how it works. Because I was lost. Like, it's very
mhm.
different in open source when you compare it to any other thing that you've done in the past. The
Mhm.
reason being, it's basically pick whatever you think you can do and do it. You don't
Mhm.
have to actually prove yourself with a certificate everywhere you go. Like if you know things, if you think you can do it, if you think you can do a good job of it, pick on it and do it. And sometimes you end up overcommitting. That is another whole story altogether. But essentially, if you open source allows you to do that, like, but in corporate setups and in academic setups, you're given a particular task and you're expected to complete it, and that's it. uh,
Mhm.
this allows you to broaden your experience. And you know a lot of people had to teach me that that was possible. Like it
Mhm.
was like a whole new experience for me, and I'm glad I had like people like them along the way, because I would have probably not come this far had it not been for them. I mean, I know efforts are there from my side also, never going to not credit them, but a lot of the things that I have achieved is because I have had people, holding my hand along the way and telling me that this goes, this works in a particular way, like
Mm-hmm.
and this is how it functions, and
Mm-hmm.
pointing me, like giving me like how I want to say pointers, but it's not pointers. I do not have the right, those signs on the road which tell you where to go. They were that. They were like,
Signposts. Right,
yes,
right.
yes, yes. Now I that is the word,
Uh,
signposts. So
no, no,
that's
it's a complex system, right? So of
yeah.
course, help will always be required. Nabarun, you want to jump in? What was your experience like when you first started? What were some of the challenges?
Yeah, so it's an intimidating scenario for sure. But before I start with the journey, I want to say that Divya's explanation of a Git rebase is the best explanation I've ever heard of a
Mm,
rebase. This is
mm,
what I'm going to use henceforth for explaining how what a rebase is and how rebase works, because
mm,
it's a tough thing to do for any contributor, no matter how much software engineering experience you have had.
mm,
Okay, so coming to like my contribution journey, I would say so it's very important to be consistent in
mm,
what you're doing. When contributing, often people come up with questions like, hey, where do I start contributing? So that's the
mm,
first question that new contributors usually have. What I've always suggested people is to find your goal. Why are you contributing?
mm,
What is the reason that is bringing you to do open source contributions?
mm,
Because finding a cause, finding a goal is very important to even be motivated in this very hard journey. Because it's not like you can give, let's say, sporadically 1 hour a day and you don't show up for a month. That is not
mm,
how it is going to work. Even if
mm,
you show up for, let's say, a couple of hours every week and do the things that you're focused on, you are going to be a successful open source contributor in the long run. It's all about being consistent and sticking to that goal. So I can tell from my personal experience is when I started contributing to Kubernetes, let's scope it to Kubernetes as such.
mm,
Um, so in my day job, we were building something on top of Kubernetes, which involved a certain part of the code base.
mm,
And I saw that, hey, it can be fixed, it can be improved in certain ways. So I came and jumped into those areas. I even looked at the docs, the website. So Divya maintains the docs of Kubernetes.
mm.
That's an area that people always need help with. I mean, that is the first entry point of any project. How do you use Kubernetes without even seeing the docs? You have to be a big time ninja to do it. Um, then I got involved into other avenues. I went to KubeCon on a scholarship, and then I met more people. Then I got more enchanted by, okay, what are these people building? This looks like a huge project. You have a 6,000 people conference about it. Why are so many people interested about it? Going to that conference like made me realize the amount of impact that you can have by contributing to a project like Kubernetes.
Huh.
Now, once I had the motivation set correct, once I had my goals correct,
Mm,
I just need to find people. Divya mentioned about people. People
mm,
are a very important part in getting started with this journey because it's not just tools, it's also people. Tools help you a lot, and
mm,
people also augment it at the same time. People will help you solve your hairy issues, people will help
mm.
you give work because they would know which areas need the most help. And then at times, yeah, I've borrowed a rebase. I have borrowed like maybe 10 rebases before I got it
What
correct
is
the
that?
first time.
What is Borg?
Borged as in like botched up. It is just a engineer term.
Is that from
Like
Star Trek?
I don't remember. I just picked it up along the way. But yeah,
Okay.
to simplify it, you might have failed at a rebase for certain trivial Git operations a lot of times. It so no matter how much Git I did in my undergrads and my previous jobs, with a system where even the repository is so big and there are so many branches
Mhm,
of code and people are contributing to it day in and day out. Every hour
mhm,
we have like a lot of commits when we accept it. It becomes overwhelming over time.
mm,
And for that, you need a combination of people and tools when you start contributing.
mm. No, that motivation factor is interesting because, like you said, you have to be consistent, right? Because a lot of other people, I'm sure, are contributing from world over.
Yeah. I always ask people like, what is when like a lot of people ask me questions like, hey, how do I start contributing to Kubernetes? My first question to them is why Kubernetes? Why are you contributing to Kubernetes?
Mm.
Uh, Figure out your goal. Any reason is fine to this. Like, yeah, I want a better job. I want a job in Kubernetes. I want
Uh,
to make the world a better place. All of them are
uh,
valid reasons, but there
uh,
has to be a reason that you can be. So your full conviction on. You have to be
uh.
fully convinced that, hey, I am going to contribute to Kubernetes. I'm going to be a contributor who contributes a lot. I'm going to be a maintainer of Kubernetes for so and so reasons, and that will drive you in your journey.
Maybe we could touch on those two. Those two sound like fascinating reasons to get into the open source movement, right? One is either to help people. One is either to help people and save the world, like you said, and the other, it helps you in your career. Could you expand on both of them? How much does it help you in your career, for example?
I have thoughts, but Divya, do you want to say a few words
Please.
on this?
Yeah. So, at the risk of sounding preachy and at the risk of sounding like,
Don't worry about
yeah,
that. Speak frankly.
I'm just going to say this, like, whatever you expect out of it, right? Like how much
Mm.
ever you contribute and how much ever your efforts are in to the project, that is how much you're going to get out of it. So
Okay.
it's not going to be that, so for example, I'm just going to take my own example here, because
Mm.
I am like the best example of how overconfident I was when I started out about my technical writing capabilities. Okay,
Mm.
so
Mm.
I used to think I've written content for other publications and stuff like that, and I thought that was absolutely enough when it came to
Mm.
technical writing, which was not the truth.
Mm.
Technical writing is a whole other game, and I stumbled when I was contributing to Kubernetes. I also stumbled upon this thing called as technical writing, and I was like, how is it going to be any different?
Mm.
um and you know what, Kubernetes had like a CNCF and Kubernetes had like a Google Summer of Docs thing open,
Mm.
and their minimum category, like their minimum requirement was that you need to be a technical writer. And I was
Mm.
like, I'm a writer, I can write, I will just apply. And
When you say technical writer, what does that mean? Is it like a coder?
no, it's not a coder. It's a lot of things, and that again will be another day podcast. But essentially, technical writer is someone who is able to convey the synopsis of, like, the gist of your
Uh-huh.
product, your project,
Uh-huh.
or whatever in a nutshell. And
Ah.
that's not just it. That person has to work on your documentation. The person has to essentially create that documentation by working alongside your engineers. How that person chooses to do so is another thing altogether. Like,
Okay.
so that's another thing, but I thought I was that without doing
Okay.
it.
Uh,
And I was kindly, like, really, I thank the person who shut me down and said, we want technical writers.
uh,
So our baseline requirement is that of a technical writer. So please, if we do not want people who are not technical writers. So that so I had not had that experience, and I went to someone asking, saying, I'm a writer, please accept me.
mm,
So I did not know my own skill set, I did not
mm,
match it, and I thought, I was like, hey, okay, what, the people tend to do that. It's not it's not uncommon. Like, I think I know things, but it's not that, it's not the same. So you need to understand where you are at first, and you need to put in efforts. And I did that. I actually signed up for Google Season of Docs with another organization. You might have heard of it, CERN.
of
Yeah,
course. Mm,
yeah. So I worked on their I braced myself. I learned a lot about technical documentation. They
mm,
fortunately did not want like a uh, proper technical writer, but that experience gave me a lot of technical writing experience. It did not end up. They did not want a technical writer, but they wanted someone who was well versed with the software and everything else. So I,
Which year
like,
was that? The
that was
CERN?
the same year, 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was still working with HSBC at that point, and
Uh,
essentially I thought I was something, and I was not.
uh,
And a lot of people think they know things, and they come in and then they see, oh, you know what? This might not be your area. This might not be your field. So they start asking you questions like,
Hello. We seem to have gotten cut.
okay, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think my cat jumped over the internet. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. So I was just saying that I knew I had some of the capabilities, but I did not match up to all of it. But essentially, you should know, where you are at. You should be able to judge for yourself whether you are matching up to the skill set. And even if you have like a part of the skill set, you should apply. But the thing is, you should not be overconfident and think that, okay, if I do this, you know, I will get into everything that is there after that. It requires consistent showing up. It's not just one thing. Like after technical writing, that whole thing with CERN, I also continued contributing to Kubernetes, like continuously in release teams and everything. And over time, I ended up becoming the maintainer. It was not like a sudden burst of uh, you know this thing, surprise one day that I actually reached where I reached. It
Mhm,
was it was continuously contributing, consistently showing up. And I think everyone who has had a similar journey will tell you that it is about showing up and putting in the work,
mhm,
with irrespective of the skill set, like irrespective of whether you're a programmer, you're a writer, you are a manager, or anything. You have to constantly show up. You
mhm,
have to constantly put in the work, without which it's not going to happen. And that's where I think it comes in. Like, you can save the world, but you have to start taking steps. You can't stand here and say I'm saving the world because I go to the I have like muscles. That's not going to work. You have to actually go and do the work. That's
mhm.
my opinion. Nabarun, do you have anything?
I mean,
Jump
I can
in,
speak
Nandita.
to
Mhm.
one of the other things that I mentioned, like getting a better job or getting a
Yes.
or
Mhm.
breaking into a different field
Uh-huh.
is how I would characterize it. So I can relate to that a lot because I was doing Python data infrastructure for some time, writing Python web apps, data pipelines. And when I got the opportunity to write infrastructure code, I used Kubernetes. I leveraged the APIs to build platforms. And that's what got me into Kubernetes as something I can do in my day job as well after contributing. So that helped me to like actually switch gears in my career. I was in software engineering all along, but then I switched from doing Python data pipelines to doing platform engineering to doing Kubernetes contributions, like engineering Kubernetes code. So there's a different
Mhm,
things like people. So first I was using Kubernetes APIs to build platforms,
mhm,
then using Kubernetes to run my apps, and now doing development on Kubernetes, like building Kubernetes features itself. So
mhm,
that was some paradigm shift over the years.
mhm. So it can really help you go into the
Yes.
other domains, right?
Yeah. I also don't want to sound very preachy here, but there was a time when open source contributions were seen like as a very good indication of you knowing stuff. It's
Hmm.
even the case right now. Maybe people don't put it as too much of good weightage. I would say that whenever I interview candidates at my
Hmm.
company, if I
Hmm.
can get some code of theirs out in the open, like if they have mentioned their GitHub profile, I see that it is a good plus sign. If I
Hmm.
can go to their GitHub, can see what they have written, where they
Hmm.
have contributed.
Hmm.
Because what it helps me with give me an idea of how do they write code, how do they
Hmm.
implement a feature, as well as how well they communicate with people around the globe. So if you're
Hmm. Hmm.
contributing to Kubernetes and I see your profile and I see that, oh, you have been doing a lot of good impact
Hmm.
on the project, as well as you have been very well receptive of feedback
Hmm.
from other maintainers, I would set that as a really good positive sign in the interview. Um, Thus, in this way, I don't need to vet someone whether they know how to write code, because they're already globally verified by other people. It's like a way of distributed verification of something.
Mhm.
I did
Uh,
not want to use specific terms, but yeah.
uh-huh. Do certain developers get paid for their contributions on GitHub?
Yes. So there are certain companies who pay contributors to maintain the
Mm,
project. Now,
mm,
the
mm,
reason that they do it is because probably they might have created the project, and then
mm,
like company XYZ may have created a project ABC, and their own people, they're just paying to maintain the project. But then the reason why they're paying to maintain the project is because they're also using it probably in their infrastructure or in their code base. Um, Big examples like Facebook and React.
mm,
React was created by Facebook. Then I'm just trying to find less complicated examples because Kubernetes is a very complicated example
mm.
because it's a vendor neutral project. But then
Uh, yeah, it
since
is complicated.
yeah, it's complicated, and a lot of companies build on top of Kubernetes as a platform, and
Mm.
hence have contributors on their payroll so that they can leverage their knowledge in their downstream products. By downstream, I mean internal products like companies' private products.
Would you ever suggest like engineering students and all, should they like ever target projects like that, or is that for more experienced people?
I would say it also ties to my first point of your goals. Like for sure, if let's say Kubernetes is something that aligns very well to your goal, or we can take like simpler examples, say React. Let's say you want
Mm,
to be a very good front-end engineer. You want to write web applications. You want to write front-end apps. For that,
mm,
React is a great example.
mm,
So contributing to the React would give you that edge when you go to other companies and show your resume that, hey, I have also contributed to React. And if you do like significant contributions there, like very high impactful contributions,
mm,
the companies will see that this person knows React well and can be a great asset to us.
mm,
This
mm,
is the edge that you get whenever you go for an interview, being an open source contributor, which is
mm.
related to that role.
Uh-huh. That's quite a impressive edge from where I'm standing.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. We have run out of time. So, Nabarun, Divya, thank you so much for taking the time off. To all our viewers, thank you. Till next
Thank
time.
you so much for having us here. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us on. And like Nabrun said, it was a pleasure chatting with you, Akhil.
Thanks. Thanks to both. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.